Rose's previous victims. Rose Armitage has been hunting victims long before Chris Washington. Fans theorize she's been luring people to the Armitage estate for years, possibly since her late teens or early 20s. The evidence sits in a closet in her bedroom, a box filled with photographs of Rose, with different partners, all of them black. Each photo shows her wearing different styles, different hair lengths, suggesting these relationships span years. The collection includes at least a dozen different people, each one smiling next to Rose, completely unaware of what awaits them. Her manipulation tactics throughout the film appear too polished, too practiced to be her first time. She knows exactly how to deflect Chris's concerns about meeting her parents, exactly how to make him feel guilty for questioning her family's behavior, exactly when to reveal her true nature for maximum psychological impact. The theory suggests Rose has been the family's primary recruiter for potentially 5 to 10 years, making her responsible for dozens of disappearances. This would make her not just complicit, but one of the operation's most valuable assets, a serial predator hiding behind a smile and fake liberalism. Logan King identity. The man introduced as Logan King might contain multiple previous hosts. This theory examines whether Andre Hayworth, the missing man Rod identifies in the photograph, is the only consciousness trapped inside that body, or if the coagula procedure layers multiple people into a single form. Fans point to Logan's strange behavior at the party, his stilted movements, his odd speech patterns that seem like multiple personalities fighting for dominance. When he tells Chris to get out, theorists argue this might not be Andre breaking through, but rather a previous victim who underwent the procedure before Andre, someone who's been trapped even longer. The name Logan King itself raises questions. Did this body belong to someone named Logan originally? Is King a reference to another transplanted consciousness? The theory suggests the Armitage procedure might not completely erase the previous host, instead creating a layered consciousness where multiple people exist in fragments, occasionally breaking through when triggered. If true, this means every transplant victim lives in a crowded mental space, surrounded by the ghosts of everyone who came before, making the horror exponentially worse than a simple body swap. Georgina's suicide attempt. The car accident that injured Grandma Armitage might have been intentional. Fans theorize that the consciousness of Rose's grandmother, trapped inside Georgina's body, attempted to end her own existence by crashing the vehicle. Dean Armitage explains they couldn't let her go after the accident, but the theory questions whether this crash was actually an accident at all. Georgina's behavior throughout the film suggests someone fighting against their own imprisonment. She exhibits strange facial tics, sudden emotional shifts, moments where she seems to be struggling against an internal force. The scene where she cries while insisting everything is fine becomes evidence of this internal war. Theorists argue that Grandma Armitage, horrified by what she had become, what her family had done, tried to kill herself by deliberately crashing the car. The Armitages then saved her by performing the procedure again, trapping her consciousness even deeper. This would explain why Georgina seems more unstable than Walter, why her mask slips more frequently. She's not just trapped in the sunken place, she's been forced back into it after trying to escape through death. The theory adds another layer of tragedy. Even suicide isn't an escape from the Armitage family, they'll just bring you back and trap you again. Walter's night runs. Walter's obsessive nighttime running serves as property security, while Dean explains Walter runs because Grandpa Armitage lost to Jesse Owens and never got over it. Fans theorize the real purpose is far more sinister. Walter patrols the grounds every night, running the perimeter of the estate in a pattern that would intercept anyone trying to escape. The theory suggests previous victims have attempted to flee, and the Armitages learned they needed a security system. What better guard than someone who never sleeps, never tires, never questions orders? Grandpa Armitage's consciousness, trapped in Walter's younger, stronger body, runs search patterns disguised as athletic training. Theorists point to how Walter appears outside Chris's window at specific moments, always watching, always present. The running isn't about beating Jesse Owens anymore. It's about making sure no future victim ever makes it off the property alive. This theory reframes every scene with Walter as a near miss, suggesting Chris was being monitored far more closely than he realized, and any attempt to leave on foot would have resulted in Walter intercepting him within minutes. Rod knew earlier. Rod Williams suspected something before Chris even left for the weekend. This theory argues that Rod's warnings weren't just the paranoid concerns of a protective friend, but based on actual knowledge. Fans point to how specific Rod's fears are from the very beginning. He immediately jumps to sex slavery and conspiracy, details that seem too precise to be random anxiety. The theory suggests Rod, working for the TSA and having access to travel records and missing persons databases, had noticed a pattern. Perhaps he'd seen reports of black people disappearing disappearing in upstate New York. Perhaps he'd noticed unusual travel patterns around the area where the Armitages live. His instant suspicion of Rose's family, before Chris even describes them, seems unusually targeted. Some versions of this theory propose Rod had investigated similar cases, maybe even knew someone who disappeared in that region. When Chris goes missing, Rod doesn't waste time with denial or disbelief. He immediately starts investigating, already knowing what questions to ask, what authorities to contact. This would make Rod not just lucky or paranoid, but someone who recognized the signs of a pattern he'd been tracking, possibly for years. Dean's actual body. Dean Armitage might not be the original Dean. This theory questions whether the man who presents himself as the family patriarch is actually the father at all, or if he's another consciousness transplanted into what used to be Dean's body decades ago. Fans note that Dean's mannerisms seem performative, like someone playing the role of a liberal intellectual rather than being one naturally. His speech patterns, his tour of the house, his carefully rehearsed lines about not being racist, all feel scripted. The theory suggests the original Dean Armitage died, or was transplanted years ago, and the current Dean is actually someone else, possibly even Roman Armitage himself, controlling the family operation from multiple bodies. This would explain how the family maintains such perfect coordination, such seamless operation. If Dean isn't who he claims to be, it means the transplant procedure is so refined that someone can live as another person for years without detection. Evidence includes Dean's odd detachment from his own children, treating them more like colleagues than family. The theory proposes that everyone in the Armitage household, except possibly Rose and Jeremy, might be transplanted consciousnesses, making the entire family a performance, a constructed facade, hiding the operation underneath. Missy's powers. Missy Armitage possesses hypnotic abilities beyond normal training. While the film presents her as a talented psychiatrist who uses hypnotherapy, fans theorize she has enhanced her own capabilities through the coagula procedure. The theory suggests Missy has transplanted herself into a younger body, one with neurological advantages that amplify her natural hypnotic skills. Her ability to put Chris into the sunken place with just a teacup and calm voice seems almost supernatural, too effective to be standard hypnosis. Theorists point to how quickly and completely she controls Chris, and how her hypnosis works even through stress and resistance. The suggestion is that Missy experimented on herself first, or that she's the oldest consciousness in the family, someone who's transferred multiple times over decades, perfecting her technique with each new body. This would make her the true architect of the operation, not Roman. Some versions of this theory propose Missy is actually over 100 years old, having maintained her consciousness through several transplants, each time choosing bodies with specific neurological traits that enhance her abilities. If true, Missy isn't just a participant in the family business, she's its most dangerous member, someone who's transcended normal human limitations through decades of self-experimentation. By the way, if you're finding this interesting, I make videos like this all the time. Subscribing would really help out. The groundskeeper hire. The Armitages never actually hired Walter and Georgina as staff. Dean's story about keeping them on after the accident is a lie designed to explain their presence to visitors. This theory argues that Walter and Georgina aren't employees at all, they're demonstrations. The Armitage family keeps them visible, performing household tasks, so potential buyers at the annual party can see the procedure's results firsthand. Every guest who visits sees two apparently functional people, proof that the coagula procedure works, that consciousness can be successfully transplanted and controlled. Fans point to how Walter and Georgina interact with party guests, always visible, always performing their roles perfectly until they don't. The cracks in their behavior, the moments where their true consciousness breaks through, might even be intentional demonstrations of the sunken place concept, showing buyers exactly how much control they'll have over their new bodies. The theory suggests the Armitages parade previous victims as living advertisements, and the "can't let them go" story is just a cover for why these two specific people are always present, always on display. This would mean Walter and Georgina's torture serves a dual purpose, both containing the grandparents' consciousness and marketing the family business to potential customers. Party guest knowledge. Not every guest at the annual party knows the full truth. This theory divides the attendees into three categories: active participants who've undergone the procedure, customers shopping for bodies, and wealthy racists who think they're attending an exclusive social event. Fans argue the Armitages wouldn't risk exposing their operation to everyone, instead maintaining layers of secrecy. Some guests might believe they're at a networking event for progressive wealthy liberals, completely unaware of the auction happening around them. Others might know about the procedure but haven't committed yet, attending to observe and consider. The theory points to different guest behaviors. Some interact with Chris with predatory interest, examining him, while others seem genuinely oblivious, just making awkward small talk. Jim Hudson, the blind art dealer, knows everything and is an active buyer. The Armitages could gauge interest, identify potential customers, and maintain plausible deniability if anyone ever investigated. Not everyone needs to know everything. Some people are just there to normalize the gathering, to make it seem like a standard wealthy party rather than a slave auction. Jeremy's victims. Jeremy Armitage has personally kidnapped people before Chris. The theory examines Jeremy's aggressive confidence, his immediate hostility, his practiced fighting technique. When he attacks Chris at the end, his movements aren't amateur. He knows exactly how to restrain someone, exactly how to initiate the procedure's first stage. Fans theorize Jeremy serves as the family's muscle, the one who handles victims who become suspicious too early or try to leave. His interest in Chris's physical strength, his probing questions, his aggressive game of testing Chris's reflexes all suggest someone evaluating a target. The theory proposes Jeremy has intercepted previous victims who tried to escape. Perhaps people who arrived with Rose, but got suspicious before the procedure could begin. His casual mention of getting Chris in the gym might reference a specific location where he subdues victims. Some versions of this theory suggest Jeremy enjoys the hunt, that he's the family member most excited by the violence, while the others prefer the clinical aspects. His drunk aggression at dinner might not be random acting out, but frustration at having to wait, at not being allowed to immediately subdue Chris. If true, Jeremy's role extends beyond recruitment assistance. He's the family enforcer, someone who's physically overpowered numerous victims and dragged them to the basement surgery. This makes him potentially more dangerous than any other family member because he's unpredictable, violent, and experienced in combat. Coagula success rate. Many coagula procedures fail completely. This theory argues the Armitage family experiences frequent failures, complications that result in death or unusable results, but they hide this from potential customers. Georgina's car accident might have been caused by procedure complications, a neural misfire that caused her to lose control of the vehicle. Walter's instability, his aggressive territoriality, might indicate his procedure wasn't entirely successful either. The theory suggests for every successful transplant, like Jim Hudson becoming Logan King, there are multiple failures the family has to dispose of. Fans point to the size of the property, the isolated location, the family's medical expertise. They would need space to hide failed experiments, land to bury mistakes. The theory proposes that Roman Armitage's success rate is much lower than he admits. Possibly only 30 to 40% of procedures result in functional transplants. The rest end in death, brain damage, or psychological breaks that render the subject useless. This would explain why the family needs a constant supply of victims, why Rose continuously recruits. They're not just serving customers, they're compensating for catastrophic failure rates, always needing more bodies because most procedures don't work. If true, Chris was extraordinarily lucky. The procedure that began on him might have had a higher chance of killing him than successfully making him Jim Hudson's new body. Chris's father. Chris's absent father knew something about the Armitage family or the region. This theory connects Chris's backstory about his mother's death to the Armitage operation, suggesting there's a hidden history. Fans note that Chris's mother died in a hit and run, walking home alone at night when Chris was 11. The theory proposes she wasn't just walking randomly, she might have been fleeing something, trying to get away from someone. Chris's father disappeared from his life around the same time, a detail Chris mentions, but doesn't elaborate on. What if Chris's father knew about disappearances in upstate New York? What if he investigated something, discovered something, and either disappeared himself or went into hiding? Some versions of this theory suggest Chris's mother encountered the Armitages years ago, escaped, and was tracked down and eliminated. The hit and run might not have been an accident, but an assassination, and Chris's father fled to protect Chris and himself. This would add devastating irony to Chris's situation. He's been drawn to the exact place his mother died trying to escape from, his own abandonment issues making him vulnerable to Rose's manipulation. The theory suggests Chris was always a target, that Rose didn't find him randomly, but specifically because of his family's history with the Armitages, making his capture a form of revenge or completion of unfinished business. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing so you never miss new content. Thanks for watching.